you hijack this thing remotely?
Negative. The jamming signal is encrypted.
Damn. Guess this one's up to me.
Sam, what are you doing?
Watch and learn.
Welcome to Still Holds Up. I am Couch Cube, and Vanquish got the vote for this week's video. Straight up, not lying, I did want to play Transformers Devastation and of course Okami. Maybe I'll visit them again because it's been a couple of years since we've featured them on the channel. But it's time to talk about Vanquish and how excellent the game is. Came out in 2010 and we're going to be looking at two ports of the game, one of which on my PC and over on the PlayStation 5. This is PC playing currently now, and I will have the frame rates up later on in the video. Why is Vanquish super important? Well, it's one of the best, if not the best, cover-based offline single-player shooter on the market. Outriders had a good crack at it, Gears of War, nothing has really come close to the adrenaline-fueled gameplay that Vanquish offers due to this slide-on-your-knees mechanic using the shoulder buttons. Very simple to use, but awesomely detailed to master. Vanquish is from Platinum. It has connections with Yasuaki Yamada, and there is the tissue between this and Hi-Fi Rush, and of course Resident Evil, and even The Evil Within. And don't forget the amazing, almost lost media that is Beautiful Joe 2. There's a lot of talent in them there hills, and similarities and parallels with both teams. Shinji sort of set up Platinum and Tango, so that guy's blazing when it comes to successful studios. Well, Platinum's maybe not in that latter bracket, but this was kind of the golden age for them. Bayonetta was just around the corner. This came out with a beautiful steelbook, PlayStation 4. Michael, I know you're cherishing yours, and I've certainly got a copy on my mantelpiece. I am on some sort of quest to find the perfect place to play Vanquish. There's a lot of talk of PC having the best version of the game, so to speak, and that is technically true, with the PlayStation 5 only really being the Pro version, which is 1440p and 60 frames per second, but that's barely 2K. Why didn't you find the same spot for your comparison section? Couldn't. Did my head right in. I'm playing these games parallel against each other. It's really fun, but it does get quite confusing. Before we are whisked away into the combat section of this game, I want to just perv over it a bit more and talk about some of the weapon interchange animations and how good the main character looks. Even the suit and different air releases and gases coming out the back of it is top tier stuff. Like, it's ridiculously top tier. This came out in 2010 on the Havoc engine, and this is all just an HD kind of remake. There's been no major fundamental change on engine. It's mind-blowing. Back then, when I first played this, and I distinctly remember the day, I was like, oh my god, video games have changed forever. I don't think anyone had any idea about how much of a lightning in a bottle situation Vanquish was. I was probably expecting at least 2 or 3 sequels, or even a remake. We need a remake of this with the love they gave Resident Evil 4 on the PlayStation 5. Just think about what that would look like. We're going to talk mid-tier bossery and the fundamentals of this combat. Now, you may have seen this clock face happening all the time. If you look down the bottom right, you'll see a meter. Essentially, L1 sends you into a slide that you can toggle on and off. It's limited, and if you run it out, there's a bit of punish. If you do a roll during said slide, the whole game slows down, bullet time. So it's not expendable, and you need to allocate it. But my god, when you get your head around it, it's one of the funnest control mechanisms you'll ever have the pleasure to play on a third-person shooter. Now, with said control method in mind, the game then shoves you down quite a lot of narrow mildly structured campaign scenarios and out sort of shooting arenas, there's never one point where there's downtime. There's never a crappy puzzle. There's never an enemy that you have seen before. A lot of them are applicable to certain levels, and the hierarchy and AI development on some of the big dudes and the people who are in charge of the little guys, whoa, this was really ahead of its time, and an absolute pleasure to fight all of this stuff. This is an exception, still holds up, because not only does this game hold up as good as it would have done in 2010 against anything on the market at the time, but right now, right to this day, in 2023, I've got a few games that give me this sort of experience. I think a lot of it could be down to its pace and the fact that it knows what you want, particularly with boss fights and boss fight arenas and their sort of character type. It's almost Metal Gear Solid cheese with some of these quite well fleshed out villains, and yes, there is some classic button mashing QTE. Sticking to that sort of mini-boss, mid-tier boss theme, I clean forgot about the Panther thing that transforms into a axe-wielding, heat-seeker missile-firing genetic nightmare. It's just one of the very well thought-out and choreographed awesome enemies you have to fight in this game. I wanted to cover its weapon and reward system. Essentially, there is no loot, there's no default skin. You just get what you're given with weapon variety, and then you can upgrade that particular weapon that's in your slot 3. The 4 slots taken up by grenades, and shifting around is done on directional buttons. I'm a big traditionalist with weapons in the game, liking the machine guns and shotguns, and like the life gun and some of the heat seeker stuff I feel is a little bit OP, but the laser cannon, man. Let's talk about the game's difficulty, because I feel normal mode is a little bit easy to medium, and the hard mode is where I have my sweet spot. But I did go to that after finishing the game, and when you do get to the back end of this, you do realise that it's like 15 to 10 hours long, which is a bit of a heartbreaker. I remember a lot of journalists being like, it's way too short. I'm like, if a game really affected you on its shortness at that level, then it was probably quite good. But as with all sort of Shinji projects, there's this kind of challenges which points towards more of a mercenaries mode with an online leaderboard, a locked arena that gives you a nice sample of the enemies within that level. Arena 1 features that flying dude and all the sample enemies from that level, and it's a great place to sort of cut your teeth with dealing with loads of these things at once. I wanted to talk about the game's bullet time, because a little bit like Max Payne 3, lots of cool stuff can happen when you're within it. So enemies will fire projectiles at you that can be smaller bullets that you can't hit, but medium to large missiles you can, and you can also catch it leaving the enemy gun barrel and detonate it right next to the boss itself. It's very satisfying, and being able to shoot something out of the air that's heading your way feels very cool. There's also a close quarters attack on Circle, and it's that well integrated, or the combat with the ranged weaponry is that good that you barely remember to use it. It's pretty cool if you want to reload and you've got someone standing right next to you, but again, you cannot really detract from being the most powerful third-person cover-based protagonist in the world. So there is an achievement for taking one of these things out with a flip kick, but as you can see, it ended up with like a millimetre of health, and I have to wait for my power to build up before I can put another kick in. Playing cat and mouse with these things is absolutely excellent, and when you are not in the position to use the special L1 slide, you can actually do Dark Souls rolls and avoids, and if you're familiar with a third-person ARPG, you kind of feel at home getting out of the way of stuff at the last minute. The camera gets wrestled off you all the time to show you new stuff or cool things because you know the game quite well. It's like, get off me, let me shoot this thing. But it's very cool the way they introduce new enemies, and how amazing are these little roller dudes. They pop out. You saw the fences earlier. Everything is designed with a lot of love and a lot of environmental specialities to that particular level. What about punishment of death? How does that work? Well, there's no typewriters. You just get to a stage, it will auto-save. Some particularly difficult arenas or areas will have a deliberate save point in front of it, so when you die you get straight back in there, but there's no real risk or loss. It's just very pick up and play. As soon as you go down, you're like, I've got to get back in there and sort that situation out. Not only is Vanquish still holds up's best game so far by a square mile, it probably is my favourite 9th generation console game of all time. That's a huge one, but I've had years to think about that. And if anyone said to me, oh, what do you fancy playing? You've only got one game in like 20 minutes, you would whack this on. I was, of course, the delectable Couch Coop, and the Still Holds Up series is linked in a playlist below. It doesn't do too well. Hopefully things will change on that front, and if you haven't played Vanquish, you know what you've got to go and do now. I will, of course, see you all down there. My next video I'm aiming to have is Remnant from the Ashes 2 out by the weekend. Wow, another brilliant third-person ARPG shooter.
Shibuya なのか